Hey everyone, so today is day 4 of 7-day landscape practice, and we are going to paint beautiful beach landscape, and we are focusing on dry brush technique today. So painting beach landscape is one of my favorite subject, and if you check out my Instagram profile you will find a lot of videos on the same subject. So we are going to use similar composition for today's painting, and we are going to create a lot of texture using dry brush technique. And this is the supply list for today's painting. I am going to use my usual plastic palette for today's tutorial, and let me show you the swatches of the paint that we are going to use today. I'm using my Artify brush, and you can get 15% off on your order. I have mentioned the code in the description of this video. So the first one is ultramarine blue. Next one is cerulean blue. Then we have Payne's gray. Next one is sepia. And lastly we have viridian and burnt sienna for the sand. So now I have again divided my paper, and I'm planning to paint mini landscape to cover all the techniques in this tutorial. And now I'm sketching the horizon line, leaving 1/3 part from the bottom of the paper, and then I'm marking a little island in the background and the rocky area and some plantation in the foreground. Now let's start by painting the sky wet on wet. So I am applying clean coat of water just above the horizon line to paint the sky. So now I am painting the sky using wet in wet technique and doing a graduated wash. Start applying paint from the top of the paper and then keep dragging the paint till the horizon line, and you do not have to add any paint in between. We want the darkest part on the uh, top of the paper, and as we come down towards the bottom it should be lighter, and that's the graduated wash. Next I am painting the background island using the mix of viridian, ultramarine blue and Payne's gray, and I am keeping the values very light and little bit darker than what we have used in the sky. Make sure your painting doesn't hold a lot of water, otherwise it will create blooms, and then after drying it create harsh line in the sky. Next I am painting the green vegetation area over this rocky part, and I am using mixture of viridian and cadmium yellow to block the background, and then I am going to add little bit darker values of viridian mixing with ultramarine blue and sepia. While adding this darker color at the bottom of this green vegetation, make sure that the background is still wet, otherwise it will create a harsh line in between the vegetation and the rocky area. Next I am painting the base of this rocky area using brown or burnt sienna, and I am painting this wet on dry because I want the outline of this rocky area to be well defined. And I have added little bit of sepia over here while the background was still wet to create little bit of shadow. So next I have mixed viridian with ultramarine blue and little bit of Payne's gray to create a perfect shade for the water. If you have phthalo turquoise, you can use that color to paint the water. And also leave white space in between the strokes, and also leave some white space where water touches the rocky area and shore. And as we come near towards the shore, keep your brush strokes horizontal and leave more white space in between to create an impression of waves. So now I am adding little bit darker value of the same paint near the horizon line and in between to create an impression of movement. Now I am going to paint the sand area using wet in wet technique, and I am applying clean coat of water here. Now pick up some lightest value of the burnt sienna, or if you don't have burnt sienna you can use yellow ochre and paint the background of the sand. While the background is still wet, I am dropping in some sepia around the bottom corner, and using the tip of my brush I am adding some more sepia near the shoreline where water touches the sand to create an impression of wet sand. Now I'm covering the whole area except the sand, and using some fun splattering technique I am creating an impression of rocks and pebbles on the sand. Let me zoom in the frame so you can see the effect that we have created using splatter. Now let's wait this sand part to dry, and meanwhile we are doing some texture using dry brush technique, and I am using my smaller size round brush and removing all the water and picking up almost dry paint or very thick paint to create the texture over the rocky area. To create a perfect texture using dry brush technique, hold your brush parallel to your paper and using the belly of your brush, move your brush up and down and apply the thick paint that you have picked up with your brush. Now this sand area is dry and I am ready to create some texture over the sand using dry brush technique. As I have mentioned, remove all the water from your brush and picked up some thick paint and hold your brush just parallel to your paper and do some up and down movement to create texture over the sand. Zooming in my frame a little bit so you can see the movement of my brush here. Also creating some zigzag lines near the shoreline where water meets the sand to create an impression of seaweeds. So if you are satisfied with the white spaces we have left in between the strokes that create an impression of waves, or if you want more pronounced wave impression, then you can use white gouache. Using the small detail brush, I am adding little bit of white gouache near the shore area. I usually avoid to use of gouache in my painting and just make a use of white space that I have left behind during painting the water. So now I'm painting few bodies here and there to finish off this painting. So now our painting is done and it's completely dry. Let's remove the tape and see the final painting. So today we learn about dry brush technique, and we have created a nice texture over the sand part. You can use this dry brush technique to create any texture in the watercolor painting where you want your paint to be very thick and your brush has little or no water. So try out this dry brush technique, and if you have any question related to any of my tutorials, then let me know, and I will see you in my next lesson. Thank you so much and happy painting.